Hi, this is Phil Congdon, pastor of the Braunfels Bible Church. It is now Tuesday, the third day of Holy Week, the week in which Jesus was crucified. Jesus started this day the same way he started yesterday. He was in Bethany and he left with his disciples in order to go to Jerusalem. You may remember that yesterday on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus had stopped at a fig tree that had leaves, but because it didn't have any fruit on it, he had cursed the fig tree. He had said, "May no one ever eat of your fruit again." Well, on Tuesday morning, as Jesus and his disciples were walking, and they came to the same spot and saw that fig tree, they saw that it was totally dead. It was withered from the roots up. This was obviously something supernatural. I mean, even if you put Roundup on a tree, it won't be totally withered in one day. Peter saw it and he said, "Rabbi, look, the tree that you cursed, well, it's withered." Now, we don't know what the disciples were thinking. Maybe they thought that this was a pretty neat trick that Jesus had pulled, that he could make this tree die in one day. Maybe it even crossed their minds that if Jesus could make this hardy tree die, well, maybe he could make the Roman Empire wither as well. But whatever they were thinking, Jesus used this moment instead to teach them a lesson about prayer. He said to them, "All things that you ask in prayer, believing, you will receive." In just a couple of days, Jesus knew he would be crucified. He knew that he would no longer be with his disciples and that they were going to need to learn to depend on God and to be able to pray and ask God for what they needed with faith. So it was that on Tuesday morning, as they were on their way to Jerusalem, Jesus taught the disciples about prayer, the power of prayer that they could have. And he taught it from a withered tree. It was a lesson that they would apply often in the months and years to come. Well, when Jesus arrived at Jerusalem and went into the temple that morning, you can imagine the Jewish leaders, oh, they were steaming. After what had happened the previous day, the people were fascinated with Jesus. They were hanging on every word that he said. And even though the high priest and his other workers wanted to arrest Jesus, they knew they couldn't because he was so popular. So instead, they sent some of their smartest people to question Jesus, to try to trip him up. So they asked him, "By whose authority do you do these things? Is it lawful for us to pay taxes to Caesar? What is the greatest commandment in the law?" You see what they were doing? They were trying to get Jesus to say something that would divide his following. But no matter what they asked, Jesus answered. He left them speechless, and the people loved it. And in fact, Jesus even began to turn the tables on them. He called them blind guides. He called them fools. He called them serpents and a brood of vipers. He said that because of them, judgment was coming on the nation. You know, as Jesus left the city of Jerusalem on Tuesday afternoon with his disciples, the temple leaders were more angry than they had ever been. And it was interesting that it's recorded that as they were walking out of the city, that his disciples turned to him and said, "Lord, look at this magnificent temple." And Jesus said to them, "You know, not one stone will be left on top of another." Well, that got them thinking. as they walked down through the Kidron Valley and up the other side of the Mount of Olives, they stopped. Maybe they were going to rest. They sat down. But there was so much they wanted to know. So the disciples said to Jesus, Lord, when are these things going to happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? And Jesus began to tell them there on Tuesday evening about things that have still not happened even today. A time of great tribulation that would come on the whole earth. It would be unleashed on the world, things that no one had ever imagined before. And then he said, after that time, I am going to return and I am going to set up my kingdom. And on that day, he said, all the Jews will look on me. They will recognize me as their Messiah. He ended by telling his disciples, you know, of that day and that hour, no one knows. They couldn't know. But he said, watch and be ready. And as they made their way back to Bethany for the night, their heads were filled with all kinds of questions and wonder at all that Jesus had taught them.